What does the ego in Ultra Ego actually mean in Dragon Ball Super? A lot of people assume that it's in reference to Vegeta's massive ego in terms of him being egotistical and confident and arrogant, but actually, there is much, much, much more to it than that, and that is what I want to talk about in today's video. Dragon Ball has a really cool way of taking a word and playing on every definition of that word when implementing it into the series. And it does that with Ultra Ego probably better than any other form. Now, psychology defines the ego as the part of the mind that is responsible for analyzing your reality and affirming your sense of personal identity. The ego's primary function is to ensure your basic survival needs. So basically having food, securing shelter, assessing your environment to make sure you're not in danger. It essentially analyzes the future and pushes you to plan for something that hasn't happened yet. It revisits the memories from the past to determine if you could have done something better, and it does this in an attempt to create a better future for yourself. We actually see Vegeta doing this through meditation. He is actually planning ahead in order to make sure that he has a better future as a martial artist, which I thought was a really cool nod at the ego that Ultra Ego is referencing. Now, I do think that Ultra Ego does partially reference Vegeta's arrogance because that is associated with your ego, but that is not the main theme of the form itself or what it's playing on. Vegeta cultivating his ego is a cool parallel to Goku's path, and I really like how Toriyama is focusing on the modern biological understanding of the ego and its necessity to make it complementary rather than a detriment. And that's what makes Ultra Ego such a cool thing, is because it is playing on the benefit of the ego rather than the detriment of the ego. Another really cool thing about it is that Sun Wukong himself, the character that partially inspired Vegeta, Vegeta was mainly inspired by the six-eared macaque, the evil aspects of Sun Wukong synthesized into a separate being, so he's still based on Sun Wukong in that sense. And that actually complements Vegeta as a character because that evil that is synthesized, that is derived from Sun Wukong, is a literal representation of the ego that he must tame in order to become a Buddha. In that sense, that is another reason why the ego is such an appropriate theme for Vegeta's transformation. Vegeta strives to be the master of his own fate. He talks about this a lot in the Granola Saga. Now, why does he think following the path that Beerus follows will allow him to be the master of his own fate? Well, let's take a look at Beerus for a second. Beerus has a lot in common with early Wukong. He's a being with an untamable ego hired by the gods to do a job with said ego. And he's being trained by his immortal master Whis, much like the Monkey King was trained by his immortal master Subhuti. Now, why is it exactly that Beerus is such a major influence on Vegeta in terms of being the master of his own fate? Let's really just sit and think about it for a second. Now, one of the biggest themes of Dragon Ball is karma. And it's very, very clear that Beerus is above not only the laws of karma, but also the many laws that the mortals have to deal with as a result of not being gods. He is allowed to destroy without any consequences due to the fact that he is a god of destruction. And because he has such a high rank in the universe, he's essentially the master of his own fate. And that is why Vegeta looks to Beerus as an example of someone who is the master of his own fate. By essentially channeling nothing but destruction, by giving his mind over to his ego or his survival instincts, Vegeta is essentially purifying himself of intent, the intent that normally has cost him every single time he's been in a situation where he could have had victory, but due to his intentions, he ends up paying for the decisions that he makes rather than actually benefiting from them because his intentions are never good. They're either to boost his ego, to enjoy killing his opponent, or a number of different things that Dragon Ball itself considers not good. Keep in mind that during the Namek Saga, the entire reason that Vegeta didn't get to beat Frieza is because he was doing it for his ego. Unlike Goku, who used martial arts to practice taming the ego and ended up getting a victory over Frieza. And then in Return of Frieza, Vegeta ends up losing to Frieza again due to the fact that he, again, does not have pure intent that the series demands to succeed. Now, another really cool thing to think about is how this idea of before creation comes destruction, destroying yourself and recreating yourself from scratch, has always been a major theme of Vegeta's character. You could argue that Beerus's words are a literal play on not only the concept from Hinduism, before creation comes destruction, or yin and yang, but also the very character traits that Sun Wukong and Vegeta are based on. In Journey to the West, Sun Wukong had to destroy himself and recreate himself from scratch in the exact same way when he faced the six-eared macaque, who was a representation of his inner nature. When we see Beerus towering over King Vegeta, he's towering over King Vegeta because he has attained this mindset that allows him to be the master of his own fate. Your nature is an extremely common theme in martial arts-based media due to Taoism's and Buddhism's huge inseparable impact on the existence of martial arts. It's believed by nature, due to the need to survive, we are inherently selfish, but also by nature, without the need to survive, we are a naturally empathetic and caring species. The goal in most martial arts is to combine and accept each part of our nature in order to be whole. Pretty much all of modern martial arts-based media is influenced by Journey to the West, not only due to the fact that Journey to the West is influenced by martial arts itself, but due to the impact that Journey to the West had on martial arts as a whole and martial arts-based entertainment and media. One thing Dragon Ball fans commonly overlook about the series is that the plot rewards pure intentions and punishes selfishness. But what's interesting is it breaks the stereotypical boundaries of which one is which. Goku and Vegeta have always been the most prominent examples of the concept of selfish selflessness and selfless selfishness, but they also used Bardock and Granola to perfectly illustrate this exact concept as well. The series plays on this a lot through the Dragon Balls. This idea stems from Taoism and Buddhism, but essentially if you commit selfless actions with selfish intent, you get short-term rewards but long-term punishment. And we see this with Vegeta constantly. And if you commit selfish actions with selfless intent, you're rewarded in the long term but punished in the short term. This is expressed in Journey to the West through Sun Wukong using Taoism to manipulate fate and become a Buddha at will, which causes him great short-term success and reward by becoming so powerful that he nearly took over the heavens themselves. But he ends up getting long-term punishment afterwards via imprisonment under Five Phases Mountain, which is symbolic of hell and reincarnation. When practicing Buddhism, he constantly has to deal with the short-term consequences and trials on his journey, but through his pure heart and devotion, he attains the ultimate long-term reward and becomes the victorious fighting Buddha. And this is why Vegeta is constantly punished and Goku is constantly rewarded in the series, despite each having a mixture of selfish and selfless intent. Goku does selfish things with selfless intentions. Vegeta does selfless things with selfish intentions. And that is the theme of each character. And what Ultra Ego does for Vegeta is it allows him to attain a mindset that essentially voids this effect altogether. By thinking of nothing but destruction and giving into his survival instincts, he is essentially freeing himself from intent and entering the domain of the gods as someone who can destroy without karmic punishment. Ultra Ego, from a martial arts standpoint, is the Satsui no Hado of Dragon Ball, but not because it's a ripoff, but because, like Street Fighter, Dragon Ball is an allegory for martial arts. The ego, the monkey mind, yin energy, yang energy. Yin energy and a demonic appearance are all associated with one another. The ego can fuel your desire to kill, and so the ego is correctly being used as a stand-in for killing intent from Street Fighter. Akuma and Ryu take on their killing intent. And that is what you are seeing with Vegeta in Ultra Ego. By giving into his ego or his killing intent, he is channeling lots and lots of yin energy and taking on a demonic-like appearance. And as I said before, the Great Ape form has always been a representation of not only Sun Wukong's inner nature, but also Vegeta and Goku's as well. Vegeta's ability to implement his conscious mind in his Great Ape state speaks a lot to his ability to control his Saiyan instincts by embracing them. And this is just one of the reasons why Ultra Ego is very, very well thought out. It plays on that concept of Vegeta controlling himself through his instincts as a Saiyan and moving his body freely while his instincts are dominating his actions and his heart is pumping in a survival situation. He is embracing that feeling, and through embracing it, he is controlling it. Ultra Ego's debut is a direct reference to the reveal of Vegeta's Great Ape form and his first fight with Goku. Goku was the first person to push Vegeta's Saiyan instincts to the brink, and so when they activated, he got desperate in a life or death situation, and he learns to appreciate this feeling later and use it to tap into Ultra Ego. The whole entire scene of Vegeta tapping into Ultra Ego is a giant reference to the scene where Vegeta becomes a great ape for the first time against Goku. Now, pretty much every form, from Gohan Beast to Ultra Instinct, Goku's version of Ultra Instinct, Super Saiyan, every form essentially has its own version of someone's personal balance. And Vegeta's personal balance is based in the psychology of the ego. So essentially, you have an instinctual psyche that is essentially like a monkey in your mind who is screeching, saying, I want this, I want that. That is the instinctual psyche within your mind. So whenever Vegeta is in his happy place, he's immersed in battle, he doesn't have to protect anything, he is embracing his instinctual psyche. Now, the neurotic psyche is essentially your super ego. It is essentially the part of you that provides guilt. And that is the reason that Beerus tells Vegeta that he is being self-centered when he is feeling guilty about the sins of the Saiyans, because he sees that as neurotic behavior. He sees that as self-centered behavior. He is only feeling guilt due to the fact that his super ego is causing him to feel guilt. It's causing him to question his actions and try to wrestle with how they affect his overall situation over and over and over again. So he is again using his ego to try and figure out how to create a better future for himself, and that is the biological function of guilt itself, which is what Beerus is referencing here. Now, the balance, the healthy psyche that Vegeta attains in Ultra Ego is being in control of not only his instinctual psyche, but his neurotic psyche. He is in charge. Not his instinctual psyche, not his neuroticism. He is in charge. And that is him attaining his perfect balance. And that is what he means when he says that he is all ego. So let me just take a second to break down why using these specific psychological themes for Vegeta is so ridiculously genius and cool in Dragon Ball. Because, as I've made very clear, Dragon Ball is a story based on Journey to the West. And Journey to the West itself is a representation of deep psychological themes. The exact same psychological themes that are being played on for Vegeta's character development right here as he's learning from Beerus and learning to develop a healthy psyche. So let me just break this down. So as I mentioned before, the ego, the super ego, your instinctual psyche, your neuroticism, they all have their own role in psychology. So I want you to think of Sun Wukong from Journey to the West as your instinctual psyche, okay? Just imagine for a second that he is a representation of the instinctual psyche, or the id, in psychology. Whenever Sun Wukong invaded heaven and tried to take over the Jade Palace, that is symbolic of your instinctual psyche, or your id, threatening to take over your psyche as a whole. The Jade Emperor, who is a representation of the Taoist concept of yin and yang and balance, who is sort of the mediator between Buddha and Sun Wukong, serves the same role as your ego. He is there to maintain balance and order between your Buddha nature and your monkey mind. And then Buddha himself plays the same role as your super ego, causing Sun Wukong to feel guilt as a result of his actions by sealing him underneath Five Faces Mountain, ultimately everything being maintained and balanced and kept in order by the Jade Emperor, who is a representation of a healthy psyche. So essentially the idea is, by Vegeta attaining this mindset, he is taking advantage of the same mindset that Bardock took advantage of, Goku has taken advantage of, their survival instincts, in order to purify their intent. It's the same reason that Goku has gotten away with killing countless times. As a matter of fact, the entire reason that he could kill Frieza and get away with it is because he was practicing the concept of Budo that Roshi taught him, and he killed him without personal intentions. He's essentially forcing himself into a mindset to where he can, instead of like Goku, he can both have mercy and destroy with pure intentions. Because remember, a lot of the people that Goku has mercy on are extremely evil, and some people would consider that a bad thing. But he does it with pure intent in the same way that he destroys people with pure intent. And Vegeta, the entire purpose of Ultra Ego is to, instead of like Ultra Instinct, where Goku can have mercy and use Ultra Instinct to break his opponent's ego and try to manipulate them into being martial artists, and by proxy making them better people, because by practicing martial arts, a side effect of that is becoming a better person. Vegeta, just like he's done many, many times in the past, tests his opponent's devotion to their cause and their ideas through steamrolling through them and challenging their ego. You'll notice that in the past, like for example, when Vegeta was facing Cell, most of the people that he's faced that he has got the upper hand on, he causes them to question their devotion to their cause. He causes them to question how devoted they are to their ego-based desires. He did that with Granola. He caused Granola and Gas and a number of characters, Cell, to question their motives, and this causes them to destroy themselves and recreate themselves from scratch in the same way that Vegeta has. Ultra Ego and Beerus, through their very actions, are a play on the concept of before creation comes destruction. When Vegeta and Beerus are facing their opponents, they cause them to essentially question their devotion to their motives and their devotion to their cause, which causes them to question their own ego and who they are as an individual, which is the first step. You're essentially implementing your ego to destroy yourself and recreate yourself from scratch. I like the way that they did it with Granola because it served a very similar role to the poison that Goku drank in Dragon Ball that was essentially a test of his purity and a test of his devotion to his cause, and due to the fact that he was willing to sacrifice himself to avenge Krillin, that was the biggest piece of evidence that was needed within the series to essentially communicate to us that Goku had pure intentions. And Vegeta causes Granola to show us that he also has pure intentions by pushing him. So that concept is a direct play on this concept of before creation comes destruction. So not only does Ultra Ego play on every aspect of Vegeta's character, every theme of his character, it also complements his role within the series, not only as someone who destroys, but someone who pushes others to question their own actions and their own devotion to their cause. And in most cases, unlike Goku, who causes people to change their motives and practice martial arts, he normally causes people to become more devoted to their cause. And once they've taken that too far, once Vegeta has built their ego and their devotion to their cause to the absolute max, Goku comes in behind him and breaks that ego. So Goku and Vegeta serve as the cycle of creation and destruction itself. So unlike characters like Majin Buu and Moro, who were killed by Goku after being exposed to this cycle of creation and destruction, ultimately ending with Goku killing them, sending them into the cycle of birth and reincarnation, there is a particular character who has already been through the cycle of life and death and seems to be completely irredeemable. So rather than the cycle ending like it does with Goku, where he kills you and you're reincarnated and you're giving another chance at life, I think that there is a particular character who has had many chances to be reformed. With this cycle of destruction and creation, it may end with destruction. And that's something that I really like about how they're playing on Goku and Vegeta's characters. With Goku, if the person is willing, they can recreate themselves in life, or they can be recreated after death. That's essentially what happens whenever the cycle ends with Goku. But if the cycle ends with Vegeta, if you do not recreate yourself after facing his destruction, I really like the idea that if the cycle ends with destruction, it actually ends with destruction. I think it's overall a really cool concept, and it fits Vegeta very well. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.